Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegran, that's G-R-A-N, group, at edinarealty.com, or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 7-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners.
On this episode, David and Dan recap the Twins' 4-game series against the Cleveland Guardians. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me, as always, is Dan Thompson. The Twins head to Cleveland, and they drop 3 of 4 in a pivotal series at the end of the season. And now, Dan, if you believe it, the Detroit Tigers are now tied with your Minnesota Twins for the last wild card spot in the American League. Now, Dan, before I even let you speak, I have to say, I'm very excited about my trip to Essen. Those of you who haven't been listening to the show, I believe it was the second week of August. I had said that if I was a Tigers fan and my team was 9.5 back, I would still believe that they had a shot. So if the Twins were 9.5 back, I would believe. I called my shot. Dan said he would buy me a trip to any game fair of my choosing if the Tigers make the postseason. I have selected, of course, Essenspiel in Germany. Dan, I don't know, are you like cashier's checks, or how do you want to pay for this exactly?
You have been sending so many updates about Essen. Like, I feel like the tourism board of Essen is on our chat. Like, that's kind of where we've gone here. When is Essen, by the way? You haven't even told me.
It's typically in October, so it's going to have to be next year, unfortunately. So
okay,
September, right. October. Yeah, I'll get the dates for you.
Well, thank you. You won't make me buy the last minute ticket for you.
No, it would be pricey. I looked. I just couldn't get the time off work this year, unfortunately. But so, folks, if you're paying attention to this team, which I don't know why you are at this point. Honestly, thank you so much for listening to the show. I know I wouldn't want to listen to a recap of this series, but we really, really need the Royals to lose so that Baltimore does not care about the last series against the season. The Orioles are not going to catch the Yankees. They can't really improve their standings, so the only thing they care about is ensuring that the Royals don't catch them for the number 4 seed. So what needs to happen is the Orioles need to clinch that top seed so that they don't have to care about the last series against the Twins this season.
So there's 9 games left. The Tigers play the Orioles, and then the Twins will play them at the end of the year. The Twins are going to go to Boston, and then they come home for Miami and Baltimore. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but how many games do you think the Twins need to win to get into the playoffs here?
I think 6, and I think that's honestly, maybe that's a bit low, honestly.
I know. I think so, too, because the Royals play the Giants, the Nationals, and the Braves. Now, the Braves will be playing for something, but the other teams aren't. So I don't know how they win 6 games here.
It seems unlikely, and I just don't know. I don't know that the Royals are the team we need to even pay attention to anymore. Gaining 2 games on the Royals seems like Everest at this point, Dan. Like, I just want to make sure we beat the Tigers, and that's seeming like what's McKinley, I guess. I don't know what the difference is between Everest
they call
and
it
McKinley.
Denali now, I believe. Yes.
Why'd they do that?
Well, it's like the actual name of the mountain that was by the indigenous peoples. It's been Denali for years. That's what the park is called.
When would it? I guess my geography skills continue to amaze, Dan. It's pretty impressive. How am I supposed to keep up? Dan, I don't even understand where San Diego is in comparison to Los Angeles, and you want me to know that a mountain changed its name? I didn't even know they could do that.
The name has been Denali the whole time. It's just the president smacked his name on it. It's not important. It's not like McKinley climbed it, right? He wasn't a mountaineer of presidents. Anyway, we need to go and talk about these games, David. This mess of a series the Twins played in Cleveland.
Series recap.
Game 1, and this is just a trend. Every single one of these games the Twins should have won. That's how it felt, and it's very frustrating to talk about them now. But Game 1, the Twins drop 3-4. Pablo Lopez on the mound. A guy pitching that well, Dan, deserves to be on a better team, honestly. He goes 6 1/3, 8 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. He pitches very well. He gets in a little trouble, but Jax comes in, bails him out, and they share a very intimate hug, I'd say, at the top of the dugout, Dan. Pablo Lopez was so ecstatic that Jax got him out of that jam.
Yeah, but then Jax got into his own jam in the 8th. We'll get to that.
I wanted to embrace the moment a little bit before we got to the downfall. Dan.
I wouldn't hug Pablo Lopez. That man sweats so much through all of his jerseys.
See my vest, see my vest, see my vest.
I mean,
don't forget to bring a towel.
Well, exactly. I mean, gosh, that man, he would sweat through a t-shirt in December, I think.
Well done, Dan.
Ogres are like onions.
Anyway, bottom of the second here, Buxton makes a leaping grab at the wall to steal extra bases from Bo Naylor and saves a run. And then the top of the third, Carlos Correa doubles, Lewis walks, Jeffers walks, all the runners advance on a wild pitch, and then Byron Buxton with a 2-run RBI single. So the Twins are up 3-0 at this point, Dan. And I'm starting to think I've been correct, Dan, that this Cleveland team isn't as good as everybody says that they are.
No, but they stuck around, and the Twins didn't build on their lead despite multiple opportunities to do so. And so sure enough, the Twins do eventually get themselves into just a little bit of trouble.
Bottom of the fifth, Brian Rocchio, he's hit by pitch, and then Angel Martinez doubles, Andrew Jimenez RBI single that Royce Lewis, it's weird, he fumbles. And so the run would have been prevented, which was really frustrating. But thank goodness Angel Martinez tries to break for home because he thinks the ball is still on the grass. Little does he know that Pablo Lopez actually makes a great heads-up play, throws to Correa at third for the out to get out of the inning. But it's so frustrating because if Royce makes that play, that run doesn't score.
Yeah, and then there's more trouble in the bottom of the seventh. You alluded to this. Pablo gets into trouble. Kyle Manzardo, he's going to come up later. He walks. Brennan singles. Bo Naylor walks, so the bases are loaded. Pablo strikes out Daniel Schneemann, and then Angel Martinez single advances all the runners. So the Twins still lead 3-2, and Griffin Jax comes in. He strikes out Andres Jimenez, gets Jose Ramirez to ground out. Again, the hug from Pablo. But in the bottom of the eighth, Jax stays in, which I think is the right call, because who else are you going to go to? But Josh Naylor doubles, and then a 2-run home run from Kyle Manzardo. And so it's 4-3 just like that. And of course, Emmanuel Clase, who apparently pitches every day, he's only given up 4 earned runs all season. It's just disgusting how good he's been. He closes the Twins out. And so, yes, Jax gets the loss. Offense, though, 2 for 9 with runners in scoring position. Multiple chances to... Royce Lewis, the bases-loaded guy, couldn't get a hit with the bases loaded again.
I have a remarkable stat to share later in Beast versus Bench that I'm quite excited to share. But Game 2, Twins finally get a victory against the Guardians, which seem like the unstoppable juggernaut of the AL Central. They win this one 4-1. Zebby Matthews on the mounds, 4 2/3, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. Top of the third, Twins get on the board with a Jeffers single followed by a Buxton walk, and then a Wallner RBI single. Now, this single from Wallner, it's so odd to me when he gets on base by not getting hit by pitch, by not walking, and by not hitting a home run or like a double off the wall. It was just a single that went through the right side of the infield. And I honestly did a double take. I'm like, Wallner hit that? That doesn't seem right.
Well, bottom of the fourth, the Guardians tied up in a Lane Thomas solo home run. And then Zebby he's not allowed to finish. His reaction when he got pulled, I think, was still pretty pumped because he did give them a good start. They won the game. Top of the fifth, with 2 outs, Buxton doubles, Wallner hits an RBI single, so it's 2-1. And then the top of the sixth, Willie Castro steals second. Eli Morgan gets hit on the head with a throw from Bo Naylor.
I didn't understand what happened. So, watching it live, I'm like, that is the worst throw I've seen to second base in a long time. And then on the replay, you see it doink right off the guy's head, and you're like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense.
Well, and then the big hit really is in the top of the eighth. Trevor Larnach singles, and then Willie Castro just jacks a home run to right field. So the Twins lead 4-1. And then things go well for the bullpen overall here. Bottom of the eighth, Duran enters, pitches a clean eighth, stays in the ninth, gets into a little bit of trouble. Well, I guess it didn't go great, actually. It was a very nerve-wracking moment. But Jose Ramirez doubles, Lane Thomas walks, so then Griffin Jax has to come back in. Will Brennan singles, so the bases are loaded with 2 outs. But then Jax gets Bo Naylor to ground out, and Jax, to say that he took the ball himself would be not a fair description of what happened here.
No, this was a mother lifts the car off of the baby to save it moment. I mean, he knew that this team needed a win desperately, and he wanted that out more than anything he's ever wanted in his whole life, Dan. And so if you watch him run, he might have taken Usain Bolt, in the 100 in that moment. If it was a race to see who could get to first base, Griffin Jax, all of his might, Dan, went into those steps.
Well, and really, all in all, the bullpen pitched well. They get the first inning, first batter out of Irvin, the guy that they picked up as a free agent. He's not eligible for the playoffs if the Twins get there. Cole Sands came in, Henriquez, and then Duran Jax. And so a lot of innings from the bullpen, which I think was an issue here in Game 3.
It's almost like if they would have picked up a couple of arms at the trade deadline, Dan, these could have been wins as opposed to losses.
Yeah, it seems that way.
So going into Game 3, Twins lose this one 4-5. Bailey Ober on the mound, pretty dominant here. 7 innings pitched, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 12 strikeouts, Dan. He had that changeup working better than I think I've ever seen it coming out of his hand. And what's so funny, the 2 earned runs he gave up were both solo shots and both to Josh Naylor.
Bailey Ober is a guy that I think they need to lock up. I think he is a legit major league starter now, which is a remarkable development story for the Twins organization.
He is fantastic. He's a big dude, and he's got got 4 kids, which just makes me smile every time I say that.
I mean, he's got to keep his family fed, right? Isn't that the Latrell Sprewell line? I mean, Bailey, if anybody actually has to feed his family, it's Bailey Ober.
He seems like a pancake dad, doesn't he? Like, on Saturday mornings, if he's not pitching, he's up making pancakes.
Oh, I bet he is. Yeah, well, because pancakes feed, everybody likes pancakes. You can put anything on them.
I mean, most people go with like syrup and butter, but sure, whatever you want, Dan Thompson.
Anyway, top of the first, the Twins again get on the board early. Castro doubles, Wallner singles, so runners at the corners, and then Correa reaches on a fielder's choice and then advances on an error. So Willie Castro scores. The Twins are up 1-0. Another opportunity where they don't get more runs that comes back to haunt them. Bottom of the second, Josh Naylor hits a solo home run, so the game's tied at 1, and we're off and running.
Yep. Top of the fifth, with 2 outs, Willie Castro's hit by pitch, which at this point, Dan, Willie Castro now holds the record for most hit by pitches in a season with 21, which is a little bit remarkable considering I don't think his stance is all that inside. Like, I think that he's got a decent amount of space. Like, it's not where Wallner's knee is basically wherever the catcher is catching the ball. Like, Willie Castro isn't that close to the plate, but I guess maybe it's the way that his arms work or something. I don't know. He just always seems to be hit by pitch, Dan.
We're about to begin bonding adamantium.
And Castro doesn't get hurt either. Maybe he's the one with the special bone structure. Anyway, Matt Wallner singles. Correa hits an RBI single. He actually knocked in all the 4 runs for the Twins, and so they lead 2-1.
Then bottom of the 7th, then, as mentioned, Josh Naylor hits another solo home run to tie the game 2-2. Then top of the 8th, Matt Wallner leads off with a double, but the Twins can't get him home, and that just comes to haunt them here. Correa lined out, Santana popped out, and then Larnach struck out. It was a very disappointing inning for the Twins.
Yeah, late in games, the Twins were not able to get those extra runs or do the little things to just manufacture a run. It really hurt them. Now, top of the 10th, Margot starts on second. Lewis singles, and then Castro is hit by a pitch, even though he was trying to bunt the previous pitch. So then the bases are loaded, nobody out, and you think, gosh, they got to get a couple. And they do get at least 2 on a Correa 2-run single.
Yep, and so Twins are up 4-2 at this point. Runners on the corner with 1 out, and then Santana comes up, and he grounds into a double play, Dan, and that hurt. And like in my heart of hearts, I knew the Twins would not win this baseball game after that play.
And you're going to talk more about Santana a little bit later. And then, yes. So, gosh, the bullpen, it's like, and it's hard to blame him. We'll talk about that too, because Louis Varland came in, pitched a clean 8th. Duran pitched a clean 9th, but without Sands and Jax available, Rocco has to go to Henriquez, and Kyle Manzardo hits an RBI single, so it's 4-3. Andres Jimenez walks. Will Brennan hits an RBI single, so it's tied. And then Rocchio comes in, hits a single, and you knew this was going to happen, and it's 5-4 Guardians with a walk-off win.
I mean, it's just, Dan, it's honestly, it's like I'm watching the same thing over and over and over again. This is what Phil felt like in the first couple of days of Groundhog Day, where you're like, this can't really be happening, is it?
Well, sometimes, like, when I'm reading a book with my students, like, and a character makes a bad choice, like, I hope the next time I read it, like, that Walter Lee's not gonna, like, give beneath his money away and things like that. Like, sorry, I'm making literary references here, David. Are you following me here?
I would argue that my Groundhog reference will resonate more with the listeners, Dan, than your 10th
Then my Raisin in the Sun reference. It's a brilliant piece of literature, David. You ought to read it.
I think I'm going to watch Groundhog Day out of spite and not read that, Dan.
Sounds fair. Anyway, the Twins, they lose game 4, then 3-2. It's a very similar game in so many ways. SWR has a pretty good start, 4 2/3, 5 hits, just 1 earned run, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. Encouraging in a sense from him because he really has been struggling lately. Bottom of the first, Kyle Manzardo hits a solo home run, so it's 1-0 Guardians. But the Twins are able to take a lead in the top of the 5th. Farmer doubles, Castro walks, and then Manny Margot, who had a couple really nice defensive plays in this series, 2 playing left field, not center. The Twins take a 2-1 lead.
Bottom of the 6th, though, Josh Naylor singles, Andrew Jimenez singles. Jokenzie Noel, who is nicknamed Big Christmas, which, as much as I don't like the Guardians, Dan, that's fantastic. I love it so much.
Did you give him that nickname, or is that his nickname already?
Oh, no, I think they gave it to him. I didn't come up with that. Yeah,
I was hoping you came up with that. That's a brilliant nickname.
Oh, it would be fantastic if I came up with it, Dan. I would put that in my Twitter profile that I came up with that nickname, but alas, not the case. He had an RBI single, and then Rocchio hits a sac fly to tie the game 2-2. We're going to talk about the top of the 10th a bit later. Can't get over it. Bottom of the 10th, though, Thielbar enters. Ramirez starts at second. Josh Naylor strikes out. Then the Twins intentionally walk Lane Thomas. And then Andres Jimenez, game-winning RBI single. A show that we've seen at too many times at this point, Dan.
You know what they say? Fool me once, strike 1. But fool me twice, strike 3.
It's good. We can't get enough Michael Scott, I don't think.
No.
So much wisdom.
Never enough.
In that man.
Never enough. But my goodness, Dan, honestly, if you thought the Twins were going to win this game, I have a multi-level marketing scheme that I'd love to offer you here. What we could do shakes, we could do phone cards, whatever you want to do. But my goodness, if you truly were watching this baseball game and thought, oh, the Twins are going to pull this one out, you're insane.
Speaking of teams tanking, I think we could go on here to Puckett's Picks winner.
Touch 'em all, Kirby Puckett! Puckett's Picks winner.
I guess you know how to celebrate a win here, David, because you picked Carlos Santana, who had -5 points. Are you flaunting the fact that you already won this thing?
I think that this is what they call the hangover after a victory, right? You know, it's after the team wins the World Series and they just can't get their act together because they're too sleepy from partying, Dan.
Well, anyway, that is your season low, I believe. Oh, no, it's not. You had Ryan Jeffers once against the Guardians, who had -6 for you. Hoax picks Correa, and so he has 10. He also gets the bonus. The listeners went with Buxton, who had 3. I picked Lewis, who had 1. Lewis has basically been a non-factor for this Twins team for the last month and a half here. I don't think that's a coincidence. They've lost so many games. And so in the season standings, you obviously have the lead with 23.5. Hoax has put me and the listeners away. He's got 17.5. And so it's me with 11 and the listeners with 10. So I guess I'm just trying to stay ahead of them.
Well, you know, there's nothing wrong fighting for third place, Dan.
Well, hold on. I believe there's a lot of things wrong with that based on the Twins wild card status. Yeah, there is.
Let's keep pushing here, Beast versus Bench.
Beast versus Bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
Now, Dan, I realize that not every starting pitcher got deep into games. However, I would say, based upon what we have and what we're working with, I am giving the Beast moniker to the starting pitching, Dan. 22 2/3 innings pitched, 6 earned runs, 27 strikeouts. In a 4-game series, Dan, your offense needs to do enough to win 3 of 4 games, and they were let down by the offense time and time again.
It really, you cannot blame the starting pitchers. And I don't even necessarily blame the bullpen guys, because they're not meant to be in the situations that they are. Now, I'm disappointed with how, Jax played in game 1, giving up that lead-changing home run in the bottom of the 8th, but even then, he shouldn't have to stay. Yeah, the starters deserve better. Do you think, though, if Joe Ryan was still healthy, do you think this is a totally different story?
Oh, 100%. I think they win at least 2 of these games because they'd win his start. And Joe has a tendency to get deeper into games. And so you'd save at least, I'd say, probably 2 innings from the bullpen, which could be better served, obviously, in one of these other close games where they blew it at the end due to the bullpen.
It's kind of like they could have gone out and gotten like Nathan Eovaldi or something to kind of bolster that starting rotation, David, but the trade deadline.
There he is, beating that dead horse.
I'm going to go with Carlos Correa. What a comeback for him. Obviously, he is not fully healthy, but I'm glad that he's out there. He at least gives them a little bit of hope. But he's got to be as disappointed as anybody, right? That nobody else seems to be able to pick him up.
I want to build a championship culture.
Yeah, I think that he looks pretty good at the plate, actually, Dan. And I will say, as a guy who's not really known for my fashion sense, I don't know that Correa is probably thrilled with the shoes he has to wear. The Dad New Balance, slides. I don't know exactly what he's wearing to protect the old plantar's fasciitis. But my goodness, I'm happy to see him out there. Clearly, he's a guy who really wants to see this team succeed. And I think Carlos Correa at 80% in the field and 90% at the plate is better than almost any of the other options at 100% any day of the week, Dan.
I feel like we need the Pulp Fiction sounder with the foot massage. There's something about this whole episode that I see what you're going to talk about a little bit later here. We need something about feet, I think, David, in this.
On that note, I'm going to talk about my bench. Carlos Santana, Dan. He goes 2 for 18, 6 strikeouts. This is the stat that I thought was hilarious, Dan. Do you know in game 3, he left 9 guys on base? To even come up with that opportunity, Dan, to leave 9 guys on base is impressive. 18 through the course of the series, Dan. 18 guys left on base. I don't know if he still has a soft spot for Cleveland and he wanted to be there when they clinched the division, but what on earth, Carlos Santana. And the strikeouts, 6 over the course of 4 games for most of the guys on this roster would honestly be a revelation. We'd be just rejoicing that Matt Wallner only struck out 6 times in the course of 4 games. But for Carlos Santana, one of the few guys on the roster who's known for his plate discipline and his lack of strikeouts, to strike out in the way he did in this series makes me think that he's either not right or truly he just couldn't focus being back in Cleveland.
2 big hits out of him, just 2 hits because he was up in so many big spots. Twins win the series. I think it's as simple as that. For my bench, I'm going to go with every Twins pitcher who threw pitches to Kyle Manzardo, because that man single-handedly won game one for this team, right? I mean, he came up, he had the game-winning hit there, but he was just kind of a menace, getting big hits in big spots. I don't recognize it. Like, he's not a Twins killer normally, but he had 3 hits in game 4, even when they pinch hit for him, which was funny. Fry came in and hit a hit too.
He might as well get credit for that one also, Dan.
He should. Anyway, so that was just disappointing. Gosh, get the guy out.
Rocco's Rewind.
So, Dan, people are upset about Game 3 and the way that he managed Game 3 when he didn't go to Jax or Sands. Okay, Jax and Sands had thrown 1,000 pitches over the last couple of days, so neither of them were available. And so, Rocco, I gotta say, I don't blame you for the Game 3 loss, because what choices did you have? Like, I blame the front office because, of course, this is what we do on this show, Dan.
There he is, beating that dead horse.
But, I mean, it's the same story in Game 4. There's just no options. The offense needs to do more. Honestly, if you can keep the opponents to 5 or less runs, knowing the state of this pitching staff, if the offense can't put up 5 or 6 runs, Dan, there's no chance that this team can win with the state of the bullpen. And I don't understand the perspective of these people on Twitter who are, like, protective of the front office and like, oh, but look at the payroll, we're really not that bad. No, you're totally missing the point. They have the money to spend, and this team is honestly 3 good pieces away from being a championship caliber team. Of course we can blame the front office. I hate these people who are like, you're just trying to blame me. It's a trope to blame the ownership. No, it's not a trope to blame the ownership when it's factual, Dan.
Fans want an ejection. There it goes. And that was Gardy's Gripe.
That toss is brought to you by Twins ownership, I believe. Yeah, David, 4 runs in game 1, 1 run in game 2, 2 in the first 9 innings of game 3, and 2 in the first 9 innings of game 4. I mean, like, this is not on Rocco at all. I don't blame him at all. And I think, that segues into mine. Like, I think Rocco managed the lineup as well as he could, given the fact that, Correa and Buxton are not 100% yet, but he got them out there. He used them really, really quite well. Same goes with the starting pitchers. Like, the fact that people would blame Rocco for this right now is just baffling to me. It doesn't, they're not looking at the whole picture. And also, no Joe Ryan with no reinforcement there. No true backup center fielder. Gosh, they should have just gone with Kersey, for some part of the season. Like, management from Rocco's side is not the issue.
There's only so much you can do with the materials. You can't give a carpenter a whole bunch of rotting wood you found in the forest and then blame him that your house fell over. Like, that's not how this works, Dan.
Ogres are like onions.
Well, we have to look at some moments here in the next segment.
Minnesota Moment.
I'll go first here, and it's a continuation. Game 3, bottom of the 10th. Ronnie Henriquez is the right call here with the Twins up 4-2. But man, like, this is where the team is at. I mean, if they had Brock Stewart circa 2023, this team is fine. In so many ways, again, they win the series a couple players away.
Yeah, it's quite frustrating, Dan, especially knowing that there's a good chance now they won't even make the postseason. But I have to go top 10 here. You're into extras. Twins are obviously going to lose. And again, if you don't think the Twins are going to lose this game, I don't know what team you've been watching this season. But Farmer starts on second. Wallner's hit by pitch.
Kiss the cows.
Castro sack bunt. So you got runners on second and third with 1 out. Margot walks, so the bases are loaded for Correa and for Buxton, and neither of them can get the job done. Correa pops out and Buxton lines out. I didn't have any faith that they were going to win this game to begin with, but if you're coming up with the bases loaded with Buxton and Correa, one of those two guys has to come through with the big hit.
They do, and yet at the same time, Correa did that the game before. Buxton was good in this series. He didn't come up with that big hit, but he had other hits. I have trouble blaming Correa and Buxton in that spot, but yes, obviously you want to be able to get at least a run there. I thought bunting, was the right call to get guys in scoring position. But again, the Guardians knew they were going to win that game. It didn't matter what happened.
Didn't matter at all. And we should note too, Jimenez, he did the gritty after scoring that run. And I don't know if he knows the connection to Minnesota, like if that's important.
He knows. Oh,
you think so?
No, that's a good dig.
The gritty is pretty mainstream now, though. Like, a lot of guys are doing it. It's not
but
just
he
JJ.
Looked at the Twins dugout while he did it. Like, he knew what he was doing.
I hope, Dan, if there's any way that the Twins can see the Guardians in the postseason, that the whole bulletin board material thing, I don't really buy into all that much, but just keep that on a loop, and then every time he comes up to the plate, make sure he knows. Make sure he knows that you remember.
I mean, I would put it on the loop now to just say, guys, we really want to get to the playoffs so we can get back to Cleveland, so we can get back at Jimenez. That would be the bulletin board material right now.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's Musings.
This is what I'm going to say, and I realize this is a bit out of character, but hear me out for just a minute. Baseball, Dan, it's unpredictable. right? In a lot of ways. You never know what's going to happen. It's why we watch. It's why it's exciting. It's why I always choose sports over scripted TV, even though scripted TV can be absolutely fantastic. But with the way the Twins have been playing as of late, when we're recording this show, Dan, I find myself just caring less and less about this team making the postseason because I just think they're not built for October. There's no way this team does any damage in the playoffs. And as Minnesota sports fans, Dan, there's just this feeling that we always have that something is going to go terribly wrong. Even if this team was performing at its absolute peak, Dan, we know that something would go wrong. What if this time, Dan? What if this time something goes terribly right? Well, this team is at their absolute worst. There is something to be said, Dan, about a team entering the postseason with absolutely zero expectations. So what I have to say, Dan, to this Twins team, just get in and let's see what happens.
I mean, I don't remember what the Twins record was in, September of 1987 or 1991, but those were not teams that were like fantastic. Certainly the 87 team kind of just got into the playoffs. It wasn't a great regular season team, so you're not entirely wrong. But David, I cannot look at this bullpen. When bullpens are so important in the postseason, you cannot just throw Bailey Ober and Pablo Lopez for 75% of the innings in a playoff series. That's not going to work.
What did I just say, Dan? Something would have to go terribly right. I understand, but the way you're talking is exactly the point I'm making.
Sure.
There are no expectations for this team to have any sort of success. So maybe for once, Dan, things bounce the Minnesota way.
Let's hope. Well, so my question is more practical. Would you fire Rocco Baldelli?
No. I wouldn't fire Rocco, and I'm sick of people saying that. I think that he might leave for a better team.
Right.
Clearly, the front office, if you're the front office for this Twins organization and you get any other offer, maybe not the White Sox, or even the White Sox, they have a higher payroll. Their ownership is more flexible than the Pohlads. Maybe you take a job with the White Sox. Maybe not the A's and maybe not the Marlins. But my goodness, if anybody else comes calling, Dan, Falvey and Levine, they're packing up their offices in the offseason. They're waiting for those offers to come in. They can't keep sitting here with their hands tied. And it's like that scene in Moneyball, where Billy Bean's talking to the manager and the manager is explaining to him that, like, I'm going to manage my team in a way that I can defend in interviews this winter. That's how this front office needs to act, Dan. They're like, we're doing our best here, but our hands are absolutely tied. The move they made at the deadline was to bring in a reliever who's not on the team anymore. Not due to injury, Dan. He was that bad. That was your one trade deadline acquisition.
There's a lot of relievers who aren't on this team anymore. Jorge Alcala's not even on this team anymore because he's been so bad lately, and he has options. Which, by the way, you bring up Levine. Is Levine still, is this a Weekend at Bernie's moment? Like, is Levine still actually around? You never hear him talk. It's all Falvey all the time. I agree with you.
Falvey all the time. That's his podcast. It's just all. Thanks for tuning in to Al Falvey all the time.
Like,
bump to bump, 3 to 5 on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Go Twins.
I just don't see how this is an attractive job right now. If you're looking for, like, Craig Counsell's not coming to Minnesota. I worry if they lose Rocco. Yeah, they'll find somebody who wants to have a managerial job, but it's not going to be somebody who you're going to have a lot of confidence in. It's not going to be somebody who thinks, yeah, I think I can go there and win now.
Well, I think that there's a lot of doom and gloom here, rightfully so, if the Twins make no moves in the offseason. But I'm more frustrated because the core of this team can be a very good baseball team, Dan.
Totally.
And so if you're not willing to add the few pieces that you need, though, then yeah, nobody's going to want to come here. You need a few moves. That's all you need. And this team is a contender, and they just refuse to do it.
Maybe they just need the TV deal. Isn't that what they need, David? Maybe.
Well, we don't even know what's going to happen next season. Direct to streaming makes the most sense. $20 a month, you can watch all the Twins games you want. But no, they're going to probably look elsewhere for big money, and they're going to have to figure out a way to let people watch, and everybody's going to be upset, and it's going to be terrible. Because there's one thing we know about this ownership, Dan. They will always make the wrong moves.
All right. Well, that's well said. Let's go on here and let's grade this series.
Series grades.
It's got to be an F, Dan. I mean, to lose each of these games like you're playing the Yankees in the postseason is unacceptable. I don't understand it. It's the Guardians. Again, I know they won the division. I still don't care. I still don't think they're that good. Steven Kwan being on the IL is only helpful to the Twins' chances if they see him in the postseason through some miracle. But my goodness, this team isn't that good. And if the Twins had any semblance of a adequate bullpen, They win 3 of 4 here, and it's not particularly close. Again, they're getting an F because you have to win more here. I don't blame Rocco. I blame the front office. And honestly, I'm concerned about next season if the front office refuses to make any moves in the offseason.
Yeah, so my advanced rate is a 2 out of 10 for the reasons that they needed to win this series, and they didn't. And now they're in a tie with the Tigers. But well-played baseball, 8 out of 10. I thought that they played well enough to win overall, right? I mean, obviously the bullpen crumbled, but I don't blame the bullpen. This is a bunch of guys who are overworked. Some of them should be in AAA, and they don't have the arms. It's a 10 out of 20, and it's an F.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
Okay, Dan. Astros are taking on the Padres. It's the only game on. So if you were on Twitter, a lot of people were talking about this game because it was the only baseball game on for anybody to be watching. But so Jose Altuve fouls a ball off his foot, but the ump doesn't call it that way. And so it's a live ball, so he gets thrown out. Well, Altuve takes his shoe and sock off to show the ump that he fouled the pitch off. And I could only think, Dan, the whole time, his wife must be absolutely furious, as she's always so concerned about his modesty. You remember he didn't want to lose his shirt because his wife would hate to have his shirtless body on parade. I think it might have had something to do with the wire that would tell him what pitch is coming, but it might be the modesty thing. It's always hard to know.
This is the Pulp Fiction thing, right? You never take your foot, you never bare your foot for another person, David. This is tantamount to all kinds of malfeasance.
Hang on. There's got to be a sounder here. I'm just not sure.
I can't compete with you physically, and you're no match for my brains.
Speaking of brain power, Dan, the Mariners try to steal home on a 3-0 count with 2 outs and the bases loaded. I did not realize that Tommy Watkins was hired by the Mariners, sending him home. And then actually, a game later, J-Rod gets thrown out at third. I don't know if you saw this.
Yes, I
did.
The
batter threw the bat. J-Rod thought the bat must have been the ball, so he starts breaking for home, and then he's thrown out at third because the catcher had the ball the whole time, Dan.
Well, I think he was just getting out of the way of the bat, and he forgot that the ball was still live, and so then he had to dive back. Yeah, I mean, Mariners fans are even more unhappy with their team right now than the Twins are with theirs, so that's saying something. Nobody wants that wild card except the Detroit Tigers, which makes me think that that's why they're going to win it. They want it more.
So, Dan, I'm going to let you take the next one here because it's your guy, Shohei Ohtani.
Hold on. My guy is Aaron Judge. But, yes, Shohei had a monster of a game. He created a new club. It's actually the 51-51 club now with home runs and stolen bases. He went 6 for 6 tonight. 3 home runs, 2 doubles, 1 single, 10 RBI.
That's more than the Twins offense did in this series, Dan.
I mean, it's amazing. And also, you pointed this out to me, too. He's going to be in the playoffs for the first time in his career. And poor Mike Trout is sitting over across town in L.A. thinking, oh, man, I should have left, too.
I mean, at least he's eating a Subway, though. You know, he's got a Subway sandwich.
Yeah, he's got that good deal there. Him and Steph Curry really enjoying their Subway sandwiches.
Anyway, Dan, with that, let's go ahead and jump to our Puckett's picks for the Red Sox series. Before we do this, Dan, I do need to say, I do appreciate that we're talking about a team that can still make the postseason, and it's the end of September. However, just like with the series grades, Dan, the grade is reflective of the type of series that they played. And right now, it's really hard to see the silver lining to a team that is playing this poorly.
Yeah, it definitely is.
And we'll see you tomorrow night. Puckett's Picks.
Well, the listeners, not shockingly, are going to take Correa, and then it'll go to me, actually, with my Santana -5. I'm going to take Buxton. I do think that he's seeing the ball quite well, actually, and so I'm happy with that. I hope that he can put up some big numbers, and I honestly just win some games here, boys.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Willie Castro. I thought he looked a lot better in this series, and then Hoag's picks last. And he's going to take Royce Lewis.
Seems just as good as any, Dan, honestly. We'll have to see if Royce can turn it around. We'll have to have a longer segment about Royce next episode. Maybe we'll be talking about him because he had such a great series, Dan.
Well, David, Hoags is going to be with us, actually. He's going to be with you on Sunday. I'm going to be traveling down to Nevada to cover a football game, but I'm curious, should I put any money on the Twins here, winning the World Series? What do you think the odds are now?
I bet they're pretty good, Dan. I mean, throwing a 20 down might not be a terrible choice.
That would be a terrible choice. There's no way they're winning the World Series.
Well, Dan, don't say that. People aren't going to listen to the show anymore with lines like that.
Well, no, I figure if I say that just like I said that about the Tigers not coming back, that maybe it's the reverse jinx thing.
Could be, Dan. Well, why don't you send us out since you're not going to be with us next episode?
Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on X at Min for the Win. You can find our Min for the Win Facebook and Instagram pages. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you know when new episodes are available. And if you leave us a rating or a like, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show further, you can find us on Patreon. The link is in the description. Thank you for listening. And as always, go Twins. That'll wrap up another episode of Min for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.